Hi there, Travis Johnson from SoCal Brewing Supply. In today's video, I just wanted to bring you guys a quick little video to show you how I went about creating a starter for a bunch of sour yeasts that I have. We had a bunch of yeasts that have expired and been getting really into sour beers, and so I wanted to make my own house culture. And so lots of different schools of thought on that. You know, many people believe that you should be using the natural yeasts that are available in your area. I've sampled some beers that use that, and I'm not a big fan. So I chose to go with mostly White Labs yeast that were taken from, world-renowned sour producing breweries. And so that's what I've gone ahead and used, but to each their own. So join me and I'll show you what we did.
Alright, today we're going to get started. We're using the FerMonster fermenters. We have two different lids here, the solid and the standard hold version. We're going to be using the solid just for cleaning, so we'll be switching gaskets back and forth. We also have a 3-piece airlock that we're going to be using. And lastly, a can of proper for cleaning. We're going to be using PBW and the industry leading Star San. Can't express the importance of having, clean equipment and sterile equipment when you're brewing. In the case of this, where we're creating a sour or a wild yeast starter, definitely not as critical. However, it's my practice. I can't deviate, and so we're going to be cleaning and sanitizing as I would any other beer that we don't want to get any sort of wild yeast in. So here we've got a solution of that PBW, and we're going to get that fermented nice and clean. While we're waiting, make up a bucket of some Star San. We are going to be sanitizing everything that's going to come into contact with this starter. That's going to include the yeast packets itself, any scissors, airlocks, and so forth. That's all going to go in here once it's completed cleaning. Lastly, the proper, don't forget about that one. In those rims, it can be very dirty, and so you want to make sure that is nice and clean before you pour it into a starter. Get all our yeast in there. We'll set this aside while we work on some other things. These little buggers just wouldn't stick down there. Alright. Got everything come out of the sanitizer. It's nice and clean. We're going to put our 16 ounces of proper starter from Omega Yeast. Next, we will dilute it with equal parts boiled water. This water has been boiled and it has come back down in temperature, so it is safe to pitch with the yeast. Here we are about ambient temperature in our house, which is typically about 72 degrees. In goes the boiled water. It is sanitized, or I should say sterile at this point. And from here, we're ready to start putting in yeast. These are all yeast that have come from the shop, collected them over time. When you carry as much yeast as we do in the shop, despite online sales and walk-in traffic, we still have a good bit of yeast that go expired. I always try to use those myself. I believe in starters for all the beers I make because I want to pitch appropriate level cell count for those beers, and so to me using expired yeast isn't a big deal. I just calculate for that, and so I tend to use anything that's left over. And so here, these are all different Lactobacillus and Bretts and farmhouse strains, blends of them, and you name it. This is really the kitchen sink of starters, and that's really what we're going for. You want all of those different yeast and bacteria to have that symbiotic relationship where they all work with one another, and that's really what makes sours so great, is that complexity. And so we're going to go ahead and just add in everything that we have here. I believe there was about 21 or 22 different packets in here. I'm sure you can count, keep me honest, but it's really just a rinse and repeat, getting them into this packet. It's kind of typical with these white lab yeast that some of that yeast can settle in the caps, and so I always recommend when working with these, give them a really vigorous shake. Try to get that sediment out of there. At the end of the day, it's probably not a big deal, but it could be, quite a few cells that are captured in there. So I like to get the most for my money. Ensures that you're pitching what you believe you're pitching in your beers, and you won't have any off flavors from yeast that get strained. As you can see, the volume of this starter has grown considerably since we started, and that's really all just that spent wort, which is now a sour beer that we're getting added, and so our sugars really are getting diluted down, and for the sake of what we're trying to complete here, that's just alright. We just wanted to give some sugars to help these guys go along a little bit longer. I'd always planned on creating a new starter in about a month, just to make sure that these guys are happy. I don't have a need for them currently, and so I just want them to sit around and ensure that they are alive when I need them. And so we got all of those yeast in there, and now it's time to put our airlock on and get this thing onto this stir plate. Cleanliness, while this is a sour starter, really important. I'm huge on cleaning. You need to be when you're brewing beer. So always clean as you go along, even if that's just as simple as cleaning up some sanitizer solution that's dripped onto the countertop. Keep everything nice and clean. Alright, we've got our sanitized hands, and we are getting our airlock pushed into that universal medium-sized bung or stopper. Got some sanitizer in our triple or 3-piece airlock. Get that cap on there. We've got to switch out the lid here for our hold lid. There, we got it. Here I'm just showing you, it can be kind of difficult to put in that gasket. It's a little bit larger than the groove for it, and so I feel that if you try to push it in and chase it around, you're really just chasing that excess, and you can see I'm trying to push it in here. And so what I have found is it's easiest to start at your 4 corners or your north, south, east, west in the gasket, and then try to push it into place in between those coordinates. It does help, and it prevents you from just going around in circles. Here, dropped in our sanitized stir bar. We're going to get our lid on and get this onto the stir plate. When putting these onto a stir plate, it is important that you locate where that stir bar is before you turn on the stir plate. I find that it's easy to capture it on the corner, as you'll see here. You can see that stir bar up here now, and I just want to slowly move my container until it's centered onto the stir plate. And now my stir bar is moving and everything is good. I do not recommend making your starters in these fur monsters. I did because I knew I wanted to do long-term storage in this container. There are a few issues with this. One, it's not a flat bottom, so the stir bar doesn't move really well. It makes a lot of noise. Secondly, is you don't get a really motion of it, and so With that being said, I appreciate you watching all the way through. Please like and subscribe, and you will be getting more content soon. Cheers.